Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I know we're going to have some folks still joining, but I want to go ahead and honor your time and get started. Thank you for joining this town hall tonight virtually, and we'll be covering topics for the western portion of District 5 and the county in general. We have updates on planned and current development, road work, fire season preparation, public safety, homelessness, as well as current critical topics for the county, such as our budget, fire insurance, and more. So I'm joined by Placer County staff, as well as representatives from Placer County Sheriff's Office and CAL FIRE to make this presentation possible tonight. And so with that, I think Sophie's running the slides, so we are going to record it tonight. Whoops, you went too quick there, Sophie. We are recording the webinar tonight, and it will be available for viewing. So if you find this useful and there's other folks that you would like to share it with, it will be available on our county website by the end of this week and at that location there. So good evening again, everyone. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Cindy Gustafson, the District 5 Supervisor. The District 5 is a large area, and you see the communities that we serve. Each of the county supervisors represents about 80,000 population, plus or minus. And so with that, because of our unincorporated and large rural areas, I serve approximately 80% of the entire county is in this district for the same numbers of folks that other districts have. So it's a large task. We try to be everywhere, and we appreciate people Zooming into the meeting because it is difficult to traverse all the way through the district and get to all the meetings that we have in Auburn. So moving on. That's a photo of District 5 for relative purposes to see the area that we serve. And joining me tonight on the webinar is Sophie Fox running this, and then also Bridget Powers is listening in, and Alina Prescott in my office. So here's our agenda for tonight. So we'll be hearing from each of these folks as we move through the evening. And if you have questions, if you'll put them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, type them in. If we can get answers for you tonight, we will. And if we can't, we will get back to you with those. And we'll read them after each presentation and try to get the content experts to answer them for you. But again, if we can't get them answered tonight, we will get them answered, and you can submit them to our office, or we will copy and paste them for information to get back to you. So thank you again, and never hesitate to call us. I mean, that is our job, is to serve you. So with that, we're going to start with development, update on our current and planned projects. And presenting tonight is our acting CEDRA Director, Crystal Jacobson. Crystal is the Assistant Director for the Placer County Community Development Resource Agency. She's currently serving as our Acting Director. In her role, Crystal leads the agency's Auburn and Tahoe City offices, overseeing the building, planning, and code enforcement, engineering, and the East Placer short-term rental program and other administrative functions. So Crystal, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Gustafson. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to share with folks about what's going on with land development in the Western District 5 area. So I'm Crystal Jacobson. I've been with the county for about 20 years or so, and have worked in all areas of the county. So pretty familiar with the West District 5 area. So this slide really illustrates what we see as a changing landscape in Placer in terms of where we're at with land development. We are at a place where the landscape is really shifting. And that's a result of really a lot of growth that's happening out in the west, mostly the west portion of the county. So we've got approved specific plans out there. I've got my next slide here in a second. I'll show you kind of what those look like on the west side before I turn over to talk more about what's happening in District 5. But we do have approved specific plans and are looking to see about 32,000 homes come in. So those are approved specific plans. Were approved many, many years ago, but they have started to implement over the past about 5 years. It started to get kind of busy with implementation of those plans coming forward. So we'll see about 32,000 homes on the west side of the county, about 23 million square feet of commercial development with an increase anticipated of about 31,000 jobs. So currently what you'll see here at the bottom of the slide is, in looking at that growth, what we know to be coming, we are about, 3,800 homes that are sort of under construction or have been constructed to date. And so we anticipate another, 23 to 24,000 homes coming in that western portion of the county. And so we really, we see this coming forward over the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to be sort of a slow rollout of that implementation. But, and of course, want to mention that this is all pending, what happens with the economic climate and local demand. However, I can tell you right about now, we're currently permitting about 800 to 900 new single family homes a year. So most of that activity is in the western portion of the county. So as you can see on this slide, it is a changing landscape, experiencing a lot of development activity, not as much in the Western District 5, and I'll touch on that in a minute, but I did want to just put this out there so that you have an understanding of sort of where the county is going in terms of land development. Next slide. So this just shows the west side of the county, and all of these, colored polygon areas are large specific plans that are currently building out. They're all actually building right now. And so we are currently implementing these plans. And so again, you can see the numbers associated with it. Each one of them is a little town in and of its own, really. And so a lot of focus, a lot of resource need in that west portion of the county as we anticipate, service delivery needs to meet the needs of those communities that are being built out. Next slide. So what I want to do now is turn to what is happening in Western District 5 area. It's nothing like the growth that we're seeing in the west part of the county. However, this is a list of projects, and I'm going to touch on each of these here in a minute. But this is what's happening mostly in the Auburn area. Not a lot of activity in areas sort of east of Auburn, including Forest Hill, Meta Vista, Weimar, Applegate, but the projects that you see here are mostly in and around Auburn. So they're on the map that you see there to the right. It's hard to see that. So next slide. Thanks, Sophie. I just kind of zoomed in here so that you could see the projects that a lot of them have been approved. There's a couple that are currently under review. I'm going to speak to these as we move through. I don't have maps for each one. So if at the end and we need to come back and you're curious where something is, I'm going to speak to these and we can always come back to this map. Next slide. So the first project I'm going to touch on is really the biggest. This was approved years ago. It's called Timberline. This project was approved back in 2011 and is currently under construction, the phase 1 portion of it. It's located along Bell Road. It's across the street from the County Government Center. If any of you have been to our office, which is the Community Development Resource Agency, it is literally right across the street. And so it's a mixed-use project on about 94 acres. It is an age-restricted project, so there's 858 units going in there that are age-restricted. There are 9 2- and 3-story assisted living buildings, duplexes, detached villas, residential lofts, about 3,500 square feet of commercial and retail, so kind of a small commercial component. And then about 90,000 square feet of medical office and about 195,000 of professional office. And then there's also an area for RV and boat storage facility on site, and then interconnected trails. So again, this is really our biggest project in the sort of Auburn area that we are seeing build out right now. Next slide. I did include some pictures and renderings of the site, and then of course an overall site plan. You can see the area in red there that's circled in red. That's what's being built out right now. So to the bottom of the that site plan there, directly to the bottom is the county Placer County Government Center and the Community Development Resource Agency. Next slide. So next, I just want to talk about sort of the overall residential snapshot of what's happening in the Auburn area. And again, this is on that map that I showed early on. So if we need to go back, I'm happy to do that. But I'm just going to talk about where they're at. So these are all actually approved. And so you can see the dates that they've been approved there. But the first is the Joger 20. This is off of Joger Road adjacent to Atwood. So this is directly west of Timberline project. This was approved in 2017, and it's a 17 single-family subdivision. So there's 17 lots going in there. The next is Atwood 80. This was approved in 2009, and this is 65 single-family lots. So again, a subdivision previously approved. This is off of Atwood, west of the Placer County Government Center. And then following that is Hidden Creek. This is off of Atwood, adjacent to the Government Center and next to Atwood 80. So these are all kind of in and around each other, as you probably saw on that map that I showed a couple slides ago. This one was approved in 2023 and includes 18 single-family lots. And then moving on to Hidden Creek, this is off Atwood, adjacent to the Government Center Master Plan, next to Atwood 80 again. Again, like I said, there's several projects right in and around the Government Center. Hidden Creek was approved in 2023, and there's 18 single-family lots. And then Kemper Oaks, south side of Kemper Road, west of Highway 49. So this is a little further away. Was approved in 2022 and includes 47 single-family lots. So that, again, another subdivision. And then moving on to Briar Meadows. This is off of New Airport Road. So it's sort of behind the Bel Air Shopping Center. This was approved in 2017, and there are 36 lots going in there. And then Gateway Village and Gateway Commons are two projects that are off of Plaza Way, south of the Rock Creek Plaza. So they're actually adjacent to one another. One was approved in 2002 and the other was approved in 2020. Gateway Village has 27 single-family lots, and then Gateway Commons has 18 single-family lots, and then it also includes some accessory dwelling units. So there's what we call ADUs there. Next slide. Moving on to commercial projects. This is a list of commercial projects in and around the Auburn area. So we have Auburn Creekside. This is located east of Highway 49 and south of Rock Creek Road. This was approved in 2016. It's a commercial center project with 7 buildings, about 90,000 square feet of commercial floor area on 13 acres or so. Anticipating to see about an increase of 160 jobs. In terms of the status, there was a final 2-year extension of time approved on this in 2023. So they've got another couple years to demonstrate due diligence on this project. The next one down, Beautiful Minds. This is off of Old Airport Road. It's located south of the airport, kind of up near the Ridge Golf Course area. This includes development on 3 lots. There's a wellness facility, mixed use, and then mini storage, RV and boat storage. So it's kind of an interesting mix of uses on this site. And there's about 106 square feet of development there, anticipating about 150 jobs. And this one actually is scheduled, we're teeing this up right now for the Planning Commission. So it's targeted to go to the Planning Commission on July 25th. Next is Hulbert Way Car Wash and Self-Storage. This is located on the east side of Highway 49. Access is off of Hulbert Way. And this is the former lumber mill site. Includes a car wash, and then 3 self-storage buildings, 24 RV and boat storage stalls that would be included in that. And this one is currently under review. So we're actively processing this project application, and I don't have a target for a hearing date. So we're working on the environmental analysis on this and project review. And then the final one that you'll see here is the Auburn Express Car Wash. This is on the west side of Highway 49. East of Live Oak Lane. It's just a car wash, is my understanding. It doesn't include any boat storage or RV storage. And this one has just been through what we call pre-development process. So there was a pre-development meeting held on it, but we don't have a formal application submitted. So they've expressed interest, but we haven't seen anything formal come in on that. Next slide. Wanted to touch on Mercy Housing. So this is on the Placer County Government Center site. This was approved in 2019 as part of the, it was included actually as part of the Placer County Government Center Master Plan. So this is part of the vision, overall vision for the Government Center area to be mixed use and have some housing component to it. So there are 79 deed restricted affordable multifamily units here. It's on about 3 acres in the campus. And the income levels are about 30 to 60% of area median income, the folks that are living there. So again, this was really the board's vision, is to have housing sort of mixed in with the other uses on the Government Center campus. And so this was constructed and, a great project that was in line with, again, the board's vision. Next slide. And then I wanted to touch on the Placer County Government Center Master Plan. So this, again, I was approved with the Mercy Housing Project back in 2019. They were all analyzed together under one EIR. So this is a master plan that really guides the future development of what happens on that campus. It was the former DWIC campus. The focus of the master plan is for affordable housing projects. So that's why the Mercy Housing came forward. But then also to look at new government buildings and then some mixed use commercial sort of mixed into the plan area. So completed projects are actually the not just the Mercy Housing project, but the Placer County Health and Human Services Center, which you see there. There's a small picture on the bottom left, and I'm sure you might hear more about that from our HHS folks a little later on in the presentation. Next slide. I wanted to also touch on one. Now, this is not in necessarily the Auburn area, but I did want to touch on this. It's a PCWA biomass energy project. This is a 3 megawatt facility using waste biomass. It's on a 4.4 PCWA site on Ophir Road. So you'll see the address there. It's estimated to consume about 35,000 bone-dry tons of forest waste per year. And it would provide electricity to serve PCWA. So I want to point out this again, they came in for a pre-development meeting to talk about their future plans and thoughts about the site and the use, but no formal application has been submitted on this as well. So they came in and are doing their sort of due diligence to plan for that facility. Next slide. And then I wanted to touch on the Housing Element Rezone, which I'm sure all of you have probably heard a lot about over the last year or so. So this is a county-led rezoning effort really to comply with state housing element law, but it was a program in our housing element that we were required to implement. It was Housing Element Program 1. And the purpose of it was to rezone properties to meet what is called our regional housing need allocation. So this is a number comes down from the state that requires local jurisdictions to sort of demonstrate that they've got capacity to housing capacity to meet 100% of their housing need at all levels, low levels, and the like. So I'll show. I have the projects or the sites that were approved for the Auburn area, but again, this was approved this May, so May 2024. There were in total 15 sites that have been included in the overall rezone. 2 were in the Sunset area, but In Auburn, we have the Auburn area, we've got 4 sites, or I would say West District 5, we have 4 sites. So what you'll see here is on the top is sites 42 and 43. These are on Gray Eagle Lane. One is 3.7 acres. The other one its total is 3.7 acres, about 3 acres, and then a little over half an acre, and about 74 potential units there. So that was part of the analysis that was done, is that we were required to demonstrate, how many units we might be able to get on these sites that were rezoned. So they were rezoned to high density multifamily housing, and are intended to, again, demonstrate that we have capacity for those types of projects to come in to house low-income folks. The next one you'll see there is Site 51. This is on Gateway Court. This is about 1.8 acres, and demonstrated that we could get about 36 potential units there. Again, I want to stress there's no projects proposed at the time on these sites. They were just rezoned to accommodate future projects that could come in. The final site there is the largest, and that is on Canal Street. That's Site 34. That one is about 5.6 acres, and there's a potential yield of about 112 units on that site. So again, this was approved by the board in May. It was a really controversial project, as I'm sure you know. Definitely, something, it was a hard one for all, I would say. Not an easy decision for the Board of Supervisors. A lot of concern about, character, maintaining our rural character in Placer County. But it was, something that we needed to do based on the state law. So that's happy to answer questions on that, but that's what I have for the rezone. Next slide. And then finally, I wanted to just mention, we are also in the middle of an update to the Placer County General Plan. So this is what we're calling Placer 2050. You'll see they're planning our future. It was kicked off in 2023, kind of late last year, actually. We do have a consultant team that we brought on board towards the end of the year last year, and it has pulled together a website. So in terms of next steps, we're preparing a community engagement strategy right now, pulling together a web-based survey, and then we'll start to focus on a creation of a vision statement for the county. And then obviously there'll be lots of opportunity for the public to weigh in, lots of community meetings and events. And then I put the website down on the bottom of the slide here to encourage you to sign up for email updates and just to get on our distribution list. This is going to be a multi-year effort. Again, I want to stress this is the very beginning of this process, and there's going to be lots of time for folks to weigh in. But it is important. We've got a lot of community plans in the county. We're going to be talking about whether or not some of those community plans need to be sort of folded into the general plan. But the general plan really guides development for the county, and it's an important effort. And again, I would encourage you to sign up and participate in that process. And I think that's my last slide.
Great, Crystal. You are busy, and the department is very busy, and thank you for taking the time to walk through all those. I have one question in the queue. If there's other questions out there, please go ahead and type them in. And this one, we may not get all of your answers, Diane, but I'll read it to Crystal. So she'd like to know the relationship between Housing Trust Placer, Placer Community Foundation, Auburn Community Foundation, I'm not sure of that one, in regards to the pass-through in lieu fees being granted by the County Housing Trust. And then how can we vet the performance of these nonprofits as they are at arm's length and not subject to FOIA? And how often does an RFP go out for all nonprofits to compete in housing and homelessness? And then the fourth question is supply actual numbers of extremely low income units that are confirmed to be built in the next 4 years. So Crystal, you want to take a stab at any of that? And then of course, Diane, we can get back to you with more complete answers, because these are complicated questions.
They are complicated. I would just say this. The first thing I want to say is any dollars any in lieu dollars that we collect, the expenditure of those dollars is a board decision. So if those dollars are going to use by one of these foundations to construct a project, for example, that would be there's a process where there's a public process of expenditure of those dollars. So I just want to note that. In terms of the relationship, I would just stress that I see the relationship as partnerships, right? We know that you can't get housing projects done without partnerships and the layering of dollars spent. So it's not all going to come from local dollars. And so we look to other foundations or nonprofits. We look to, state and federal funding, and you layer those to really make a project pencil and happen. So that's how I would explain the relationship, is that, I think housing is a board priority. It is, we know that we've got a housing crisis in the county and in the state. And so we look to, our partners in how we can get housing on the ground. So that would be, I would say, the relationship there. Some of the questions you have, I think, would be better suited for our housing manager to answer. And I would be absolutely happy to set up a meeting to kind of talk through that and answer some of the more detailed questions about the housing program and how our housing manager works with these folks and to get housing on the ground. And same thing when you get to the last question there about supplying actual numbers. I can certainly pull the number of housing projects that we've got in the queue. I don't have that before me right now, but I could do that. I can't necessarily state that they're going to be confirmed to be built because most of them are going through a discretionary process. And so there's, it's unknown whether or not they're going to be approved or if they're going to evolve over time, before it gets before decision makers. But I can certainly, get you the number of units that are currently under review today.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. And I appreciate that. And we'll be able to get back to you, Diane, and get a meeting together if you'd like that, to walk through kind of the steps that we have taken on that with our housing folks. So thanks again, Crystal. And I do want to urge people that if they still have questions, they can go to placer.ca.gov/current construction. And there you can really see the projects that are underway, under construction now. And if you have issues with any impacts, we often get concerns from surrounding neighbors on impacts by contractors or our own staff. Please get back to us on that, and you can get those development updates there. So next, I don't see any other new questions. So next, we are going to hear an update on homelessness in Western District 5 and how the mobile temporary shelter is going. And I'd like to introduce to all of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, Dr. Rob Oldham. He's our Director of Health and Human Services, and Raul Martinez, who's Assistant Director of Health and Human Services. Dr. Rob is the director, and he's also the interim health officer and chief psychiatrist for the county. He previously served as Placer County's health officer, medical director, and director of public health from 2014 to 2019. He returned during the pandemic after working as the chief medical executive for Sutter Center for Psychiatry and medical director of acute psychiatric services for Sutter Health. Dr. Rob has also been a health officer at, and medical director for Fresno County and a faculty member at UCSF Fresno. He lives in Roseville with his wife, a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, and their 4 daughters, and together they coach the St. Rose School girls basketball team. So that makes him a well-rounded Placer County individual. And then Raul Martinez is the Assistant Director of Placer County Health and Human Services. He provides leadership in the areas of strategy, evidence, and external affairs. And before joining HHS, Raul was a director of the California-based research and planning consulting firm. There he led evaluation and research projects for a range of clients, including the Sonoma County Department of Health Services, the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, the California Endowment, Silicon Valley Community Foundation, First Five Association of California, and many more. Raul also lives in Roseville with his wife, a visual arts professional, and their two children who keep them busy with school, dance, and music. So two very busy individuals, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Rob and Raul.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Gustafson. And wow, we have 10 minutes allotted to talk about homelessness in Placer County and summarizing a lot of data. And so apologize for our link. Thank you for the lengthy bios, but we apologize that consumed. I think we're already about two minutes into our allotted 10 minutes. So I'll hand off to Raul, who will present on the first couple of slides, and I'll weigh in towards the end. But thanks so much, everybody. And Raul, it's yours.
Yeah, and thanks so much. And I appreciate being at work today because the piano playing is at a minimum here at the office. So we have a high schooler who a recent graduate who loves to play the piano. So appreciate the invitation to discuss, one of the community's certainly a most pressing issue, which is homelessness. And so thank you for your time and attention. You can see we've entitled this presentation, Homelessness in Placer, Progress Amid New Services, Ongoing Challenges Remain. We've got 5 slides to cover, so I'll just start with some framing. I'll also, if you wouldn't mind going back just a quick sec, then I'll turn it back to Dr. Rob. He'll discuss progress made over the last 9 or 10 years, upcoming enhancements to the solutions continuum, and then spend a bit of time on areas in need of attention. And I'll just note that, while Dr. Rob and I represent HHS and are leading this presentation, there's several other county departments that, we all work together. We're involved in responding to homelessness. The cities too across Placer play a role through their own programs and funding. And then last, here's a plug for the CA 515 Roseville Rockland Placer Continuum of Care, which actually brings together jurisdictions, community partners, advocates, and funders to develop strategies across the community to lessen homelessness and its impacts. They actually meet the second Wednesday of every month at a curious time. It's right before lunch, so it's 11:45 to 1 p.m. Those are open to the public, and Supervisor, we're happy to send the link to that meeting so that folks, if they're interested, they can tune in to the continuum of care. So we'll provide that during the session here today. So next slide, please. So this slide highlights the latest data on homelessness in our area. Before I dive in, I'll note that the Homeless Resource Council of the Sierras conducts annual point-in-time counts locally. So some think that the county sort of leads this. Certainly the county is a participant and helps make sure that this goes well through helping with enumeration, but this is a project of the Homeless Resource Council of the Sierras. And while a count of sheltered and unsheltered homelessness is mandated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development every 2 years, locally, we think it's really important. So we actually conduct a complete count every year, given the amount of interest that there is on this issue. I'm going to see if everyone is awake at 6:35. So I'm going to go right to left instead of left to right on this one. So you'll see that the 2024 point-in-time count found 702 people experiencing homelessness in Placer County. And so if we look over 3 years, that's a 6% decrease over the last 3 years. And we're also waiting on, we're hoping to receive some jurisdictional data soon and regional data soon. So as soon as we receive that from the Homeless Resource Council of the Sierras, we're happy to share more of that information. And if folks have questions specific to Mid-Placer in the Auburn area, we're happy to answer those. And so maybe I'll start to shift from right to left. And so while the total numbers are important, rates per population can also provide a clearer picture. Here we see that Placer county continues to have the lowest rate of homelessness in Northern California, and certainly ranks among the lowest statewide. So Placer was 6th last year. We'll see based on our favorable rates if we've made any progress, and if we're giving the Glendale continuum of care a run for their money. In 2023, Placer had a rate of homelessness of 17.3 per 10,000 residents. And you can see compared to the statewide average of 46.6 per 10,000. I'll also note that our immediate neighbors have rates that are similar to, or actually higher than, the state average. The 2024 point in time count also shows a slight decrease in our rate, but we haven't included the new number, which is now 17.0 per 10,000, because other areas haven't reported their 2024 data yet, and so we're unable to compare to other jurisdictions. Also note that Placer was one of the first to conduct its, not just the first to release the count for the results of the count for this year. And then, last, I'll just note that while homeless counts and rates are trending in the right direction, it certainly remains an issue that's affecting those, particularly those that are living outdoors, as well as the community at large. And so, this remains an important issue, policy issue, programmatic issue here in the community. And maybe with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Rob to talk about additions to the homelessness solutions continuum, where those solutions came, what are they responsive to, and so he can spotlight some key programs and recent programs as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Rob, in the next slide.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Raul. And you can advance to the next slide, please, which is a really busy one. But I promise we'll spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes on this slide, and then we can end. The last 2 slides are not quite as busy. So this is around, so Dr. Marbut, this is Dr. Robert Marbut's 2015 recommendations. I mentioned trying to squeeze in, at least a decade of history on kind of how we got here on homelessness. And as good a place to, as any to start is around 2014, 2015. For me, it's good because that's when I came to Placer County from Fresno County. In fact, I'd worked with Dr. Robert Marbut a little bit as a consultant. He had done some consulting for us in Fresno County, actually had been doing consulting around the country. Subsequent to coming to Placer, he ended up from 2019 to 2021 in being at the United States government's executive director for the Interagency Council on Homelessness. So somebody who has a lot of expertise in this area, and we were fortunate to have him and his team come to Placer back in actually starting in 2014 is when they began their assessment, but the report published in 2015, which a lot of our work subsequent to that has been informed by the Marbut report. So you'll hear us referring to that a lot. Some of the things in the Marbut report that were recommended, including a, quote, come as you are shelter, so kind of lower barrier, if you will, shelter with not a lot of admission criteria, both. And so those are recommended. Actually, we thought that he was going to, because he always recommends one regional come as you are shelter in other jurisdictions, but he actually came and said, yeah, Mid-Placer and South Placer are really 2 different populations for people who are unhoused, for people who are housed, but also for people who are unhoused. And so that was one of the recommendations. Another one was really recommended better coordination and case management across our system and better utilization of data, in particular from our homeless management information system. And then and having a coordinated entry system and exit system so we can measure kind of inflows and outflows. 2 more quick things that Marbut recommended. Really a focus on chronic homelessness. So even back then, we didn't have, compared to a lot of jurisdictions, as Raul mentioned, we have one of the lowest rates of homelessness in the state and certainly in the region. Saying, yeah, your homelessness, overall homelessness problem, not such a huge deal from his perspective, but chronic homelessness rates in Placer were very high at the time, and we're kind of trending higher. And he's saying, if you don't do something about this soon, you're really going to have a big mess down the road. And then finally, he really recommended which we'd already been focusing on permanent supportive housing, which we can talk more about kind of what that is, but housing set aside for especially for those who have mental health conditions and other disabilities that lead to chronic homelessness, and so to have those housing set aside with supports built in for those individuals. So those were kind of the Margaret Report recommendations. You see here on the timeline, kind of step by step, we've addressed most of those. So starting in 2015, the first stable site emergency shelter, initially with 50 beds actually, and then expanded to 100 beds. That wasn't a come as you are shelter, has requirements as far as sobriety. We do drug and alcohol screenings for people coming in. But certainly was a huge expansion of what we had prior. All we had in Placer County was the nomadic shelter in South Placer, going from a different church every night, which was something that Dr. Marvin and others have said really is not a best practice, not sustainable. In 2016, we got dedicated funding to establish the homeless liaison team, which has staff from our sheriff's office, probation, and HHS kind of working together. In the interest of time, I won't go through all the data that was that we have there on different the numbers of as far as service, but you'll see there in the gold box at the bottom of the slide some of the numbers as far as the homeless liaison team, which has been really successful in engaging, especially for people who are chronically unhoused. A lot of work around the government center, right, which has what waxed and waned over the 10 years that I've been, as far as the encampments and problems with people, especially committing crimes, who were unhoused at the government center. And so I think a lot of good work has been done as a result of this coming together as a homeless liaison team. In 2017, we got one of the I believe 19 counties in California, and the only county in the region to do the whole person care pilot. So we had a target population of people with chronic homelessness. So we served over 500 people experiencing chronic homelessness, providing that really having resources for care coordination and other case management and other supports, including housing, to address their needs. And so we're able to permanently house 200 of those 500 of the toughest, difficult to house people, many people who had been homeless in Placer County for decades. In 2022, we really expanded. Actually, we've been doing, like I've mentioned, using Mental Health Services Act dollars to fund permanent supportive housing for people with serious mental illness now for nearly 20 years, but started to really expand using savings from the whole person care program. We actually got a lot of pay for performance bonuses in whole person care that we could then use to spend on helping to support housing for people, especially permanent supportive housing for people who are chronically homeless. So that was in 22, along with addition of behavioral health crisis center with 6 urgent care beds. And actually those beds have been primarily, the majority of the utilization for those have been among people who are unhoused. Finally, in 2023, we did have, I know Supervisor Gustafson mentioned the mobile temporary shelter. So that was, I believe, Valentine's Day 2023 when that rolled out with 50 tents. And by the way, on the line, we also have Christian Hardis, who from our county executive office, who administers both the mobile temporary shelter contract and the mid-Placer 100-bed shelter contract, to maybe help to answer any questions that may come up. But you see there, and again, the other gold box, some of the data related to the mobile temporary shelter. I'll say it is full. I think the average length of stay is something that I may call your attention to, 138 days. I think there's a growing recognition that maybe there's an opportunity to focus on that and to find other places for people to go. Maybe the vision for the MTS wasn't for it to be such long lengths of stay, but as you'll see there, many of the folk, only 25% of the current shelter population are housing ready. So many barriers. Again, this is after whole person care, after a lot of these efforts. These are some of the folks that are left who have lots of needs. And so working with them, it can be very challenging. And so really appreciate all the work that's been done. Certainly, for those of you, we have our new HHS center at the government center, and compared to 10 years ago when I showed up in Placer County at the government center, I think it's a different feeling. And so I think the MTS really has helped to change the landscape literally at the government center, and giving people an option who didn't speaking to the Margaret recommendations. MTS is a much lower barrier where people can't use drugs and alcohol on site, but there's not the same sobriety requirements that you see, and they can bring in animals, et cetera. And finally, on this slide, that in 2024, just in January 1st, New Year's Day, we expanded our 24/7 mobile, or expanded our mobile crisis teams to go to 24/7. So now that's round the clock whenever someone has a need, along with, Raul brought up 211. They're, having that kind of real time, just in time intervention when someone has a need, because that's often what we hear, especially from our law enforcement partners, that if someone's in the minute, they're ready to change and kind of access services to have services available. So with that, maybe we'll move on to the next slide, which is less busy, and I'll stop speaking so quickly. But just to kind of round out the presentation, talking about what's to come. So upcoming enhancements. A behavioral health respite center to really to bridge, especially for people with substance use disorders. Already, by the way, we down in Kirby Hills and in Roseville, we have a 16-bed psychiatric health facility, a 14-bed crisis residential facility, and as I mentioned, our Lotus 24/7 urgent care, all under the same roof, that's co-located with all of our outpatient addiction and mental health services in South Placer. And so kind of building those services in together at our the expanded 82-unit permanent supportive housing in Roseville that's coming on really as we speak. And this year, we already have some of those units coming on, but co-locating other addiction treatment services in the same building with those services. And then substance use residential, we actually have a grant to get to change one of the historic barracks, some of the ones at the government center that are going to survive, right, because of their historic nature. There, one of those, the plan is to use some of the funding from the state, and there's lots of one-time funding for expansion of behavioral health infrastructure. And so using some of those dollars to create an inpatient psychiatric unit, 16-bed, another kind of a second inpatient psychiatric hospital unit at the government center, and then also substance use residential treatment, which I know our law enforcement partners really say that's one of the, when we did a needs assessment, was one of the things that really came out as a need to have more treatment beds available. And then finally, down at the Santucci Justice Center, the expansion of mental health and vocational facilities at the Justice Center for adults who are incarcerated. And then with that, maybe I just jump to the next slide. And I think, and last slide, kind of challenges in South Placer. So I know this is the District 5 town hall, but I think it's really important to talk about South Placer. So you see here, and Raul mentioned the jurisdictional counts, which I think we should have available as early as next week to really see in 2024 how things are going. But this is 2023 data, looking at the counts, and you'll see most of our unsheltered are actually in South Placer. Yeah, most of our shelter beds and other services are at the government center in Mid Placer, and kind of a recognition, and that was back from their Margaret report, right? That's we need to have a much larger focus on South Placer, because that's where the people and most of the unsheltered folks reside. And actually they don't Raul and I live in Roseville. We love coming. We come to work every day in Mid Placer, but yeah, people, all of our residents are really aligned with their particular, where they live, where they've grown up, where their roots are. And so I think there's a growing need to expand some services into South Placer. As you'll see there, the homeless shelter as a need emerged as one of the primary unmet needs when we look at our 211 data. When people call in, that's the number one reason why when people are calling in, is they have an unmet need for sheltering services. And that, again, we mentioned before, this nomadic model is really insufficient to meet the needs. Increasingly, I think the data are supporting that. And even the Gathering Inn, who runs the nomadic shelter, is saying, yeah, this is probably not the most sustainable model going into the future. And so, yes, leaders are exploring a navigation center pilot in South Placer. Maybe I'll end by saying just Eastern Placer, you see the numbers there, much smaller, but there's also conversations. We had an emergency warming, we have for several years now, an emergency warming shelter up there in Eastern Placer, and so kind of a regional effort to look at that and to address, how do we might actually be able to get that number even lower as we have expanded permanent supportive housing into Eastern Placer. So with that, I think, do we have one more slide, a conclusion slide? I don't think so. I think that's it. So with that, we'll look forward to seeing your questions. Thank you.
Great. Well, we have a couple questions. I have one to lead off, Dr. Rob, because I often get this question from folks. Who are our homeless? Are they coming from our county? Are they coming from other places? Do you mind addressing that? And then I'll go into the public questions.
Yeah, I'll start, and how about, and then Raul, please jump in. But I know so one of the things I mentioned, the Marber report, he actually addressed this question, because often you'll hear, oh, well, if we build more services, people are going to come here. It's going to be a magnet, and that was one of the things that Dr. Marber addressed in surveying people and understanding where they're coming from. And yes, he kind of assessed this question and did a little bit of a challenging that idea that large numbers of people are coming in from other states. Even we hear a lot about, I'm from Tennessee originally, so we hear a lot about people from Tennessee and Kentucky coming here. But yes, there are anecdotes and there's stories like that. But in general, when we look at the data, very small numbers of people are coming from outside of the state. Even there's been statewide data recently, that an exploration by UCSF who studied this, and said very few people cross county lines in any given year to receive, because we have I mentioned our homeless management information system, which increasingly we're able to track data as far as where people are receiving services. So very small percentages are even crossing county lines, much less state lines, but it does happen. When that does happen, when we have people who are coming in, we try to provide them services for a short period of time. I mentioned length of stay, but that's when we really try to provide a very short length of stay at our shelter or whatever supports, and linking people back to the areas where they came from, where they have most of their support networks. So, but yeah, that's I would say what and Raul is really good with the remembering statistics. I forget exactly what it is, but it's a small fraction of our total people experiencing homelessness who are coming from other states or other counties.
Yeah. Maybe a couple of other points too. In addition to that, there's some recent analysis looking at those who access services within a continuum of care. So most communities in California have a continuum of care, and so 96%. So not only are people going to not only are they from here, they went to Roseville High, Oakmont High, et cetera. When they access services, 96% of them access them within communities. So there's not data to support that people are moving back and forth, right? And in fact, we did this regional response process that included lots of different stakeholders, including law enforcement partners, and sort of what they sort of an important point that they identified was, yes, that folks that are homeless, right? They want to stay within those communities, right? And actually that's where they have their networks and want to access services within those communities, which is why sort of looking at the sort of the headlines within this slide here, sort of why there's a newfound focus on sort of sheltering services in South Placer specifically. I'll also note that I think we've seen we've all been paying attention to the news and the media over the last few years, and we've seen meteoric rises in the rates of homelessness statewide and in communities. And so we haven't seen that same rise, and in fact, we've seen a slight decline since 2020, where in 2020 our rate of homelessness was 18.4, which was still pretty low relative to many other communities, down to 17.0 this year, and that accounts for the growing population that we have here in Placer County too. And so I think that's a function of we've heard from folks that the jurisdictions and partners working together to mitigate, sort of lessen homelessness and the impact on communities. And certainly, does it continue to be an issue? Yes. And so and does it require attention? Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you both. I do know that that's a significant concern that we hear from the public, and the thought that the headlines that we're seeing in other newspapers and other areas is attributable to Placer. And we're not seeing that. And I think it's thanks to the incredible work of my predecessors and all of you in the services we're providing and the help and our law enforcement, probation, and all of the efforts jointly working on dealing with this. So I'll read the questions that we have. First, what are the performance warranties in these contracts with nonprofits administratively in order to show a predetermined minimum of successful rehoming? And has any nonprofits, private partners ever lost their contract for not meeting their minimum performance expectations?
Yeah, and I'll start to take a stab at that. By the way, I was kind of going through. I see Christian is Hardis, who I mentioned before, is also on and started to type in something here. So I was trying to type in some of the questions I was answering there in the chat on this one. And maybe I'll turn over to Christian, who I mentioned is the administrator over the homelessness, the government center-based contracts. But I'll say yes, there are for all of the contracts that's managed by the county, and maybe even speaking to the second part of this question as well. There's a scope of work involved, including some performance metrics in all of these. The question of whether any private partners ever lost their contract for not meeting performance. Yes, in fact, I'll say we even at the government center, because HHS used to manage the congregate shelter contract, the mid-placer, and so it was, some of you may remember, the Volunteers of America used to run that, and that was went through a request for proposal, kind of a competitive bid process, and then that would contract was transitioned over to the Gathering Inn, I believe, the 2018, 2019, so somewhere around there. So maybe as one example, but actually happens pretty frequently. If you look at any board meeting from HHS, we usually have half a dozen different contracts before the Board of Supervisors, and you'll see we are continually sending those out to bid and rebid, and the vendors or the contractors assigned to those change fairly regularly. I think a lot of our community-based organizations do a great job, and so we'll retain those, but it's always bid out, and there's regularly switch out. But anything else, Raul or Christian, like to say about that one?
I guess the only thing I would add, maybe this goes beyond the bounds of the original question, but depending on the service, right? So let's take, for example, permanent supportive housing. Not only are there sort of expectations on nonprofits that have gone through a competitive process that are administering programs locally, but there are expectations on the residents that live there, right? Sort of expectations around the income that you bring forward, sort of behavioral expectations. They sign tenant agreements just like many other people do, and so there's I think there's through this regional process, somebody coined compassion with accountability, and so that extends to I think the nonprofits that are performing these services, but the clients and the tenants that are staying in housing as well. And I think we see in those units, we see really low attrition in permanent supportive housing because of that, right? And sort of wrapped around, those folks are also wrapped in support services, employment, behavioral health, physical health services, so that they can remain stable and increase their self-sufficiency too.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And then the final question is, which I think we've already spoken to, a correlation of increased unhoused population in the county as services have been offered. I think you've addressed that. But they'd also like to know the number of unhoused per 10,000 population back in 2015-16. I don't know if you have that at your fingertips, if we were doing point in time counts back then statewide, but yeah.
Yes, we were. We've actually started doing it annually now. I'll say, unless Raul has it ready to fire, which would be really remarkable. But I'd say in the next 5 minutes, we can pull those numbers and kind of put them in the chat. But I'll say in general, we shared the data over the last 3 years. Over the last 5 years, I believe we've seen a very gradual drop each year in the rate of homelessness. And remember, some of those years we had the number of homeless go up slightly, but because of the rate of growth in Placer County of our overall population, the overall rate of homelessness has gone down, I believe, each of the last 5 years. But we'll quickly pull up the 2015-16 numbers, but my sense is it's in comparison to other jurisdictions has at least stayed flat since 2015-16. Raul, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, we'll this will be a good challenge at 7 o'clock. So we'll quickly peruse sort of the HERC side as well as the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development side, other than to say, yes, during that time frame, Placer County as a whole has grown between 35,000 and 40,000 residents overall, and so one might expect some increases in homelessness during that time. And so, but yes, we'll do a quick scan and see what we can find here. We're up for the challenge.
Great. And if you don't get it tonight, I know Desiree, we're often in contact, so we can get that to you as well. So we'll move on now. I don't see any other questions in the queue, so we'll go on to update us on transportation and road work from Matt Randall, Director of Public Works, Deputy Director of Public Works. Matt has worked for Placer County since 2007 and currently serves as Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works. He oversees road maintenance and fleet divisions, as well as various other administrative activities. He's a licensed civil engineer in California with more than 25 years of civil engineering experience, including time in public and private sectors, working in design, construction, maintenance, operations, and administration. And I would say we've definitely challenged Matt in the last few years with some record-breaking snowfall and storms, as well as tree damage and other impacts to our roads out in addition to just regular road damage. So Matt, thank you for joining us tonight, and I'll let you give the update.
Okay. Thanks, Supervisor Gustafson, and happy to be challenged. It's fun. Placer County is interesting, especially District 5, because we have mountains and snow and a little bit of everything. So I think I'll just jump right into it to the next. Yes, that slide. That's perfect. The introduction. So this is just a couple of quick topics I want to hit tonight. First is what we're doing or planning for this summer, our road maintenance program and road projects, and then future projects, which would be any kind of construction and work that we have planned for upcoming years. And then just a couple of miscellaneous road and transportation items. But before I move on, just a super quick overview of public works and roads. We maintain about 1,050 miles of roads and everything that goes with it: bridges, storm drains, street lights, signals, anything related to the roads, and all the road operations too, as Supervisor Gustafson mentioned, including snow removal. And just as in this district, again, on the western side of District 5, there's a little bit of everything. You have signals in District 5 too. Most of them are in Roseville, but there's some of that as well. And then public works too, just in general, so everybody knows, is kind of think of it, you could think of it in two different groups. There's the operational groups, which are the road crews, the fleet division, transit with all of the bus drivers and transit operations, and then folks that are more in the office, the administrative staff, fiscal folks, and then the engineering divisions that deliver the project. So I'm going to try to hit on a little bit of everything tonight, briefly, just to give you a nice little cross section of public works. So we can go on to the next slide. So road maintenance, when it comes to public works and construction projects, the big projects get attention. Forest Hill Bridge, interchanges, I-80, that type of stuff. But there's actually a lot of work and operations that happens every day. And I think a lot of everybody notices it, but some of it gets unnoticed. So I just want to make sure I hit some of the things that our road maintenance crews do really every summer. So in District 5, we actually have several county crews that are dedicated to District 5. So on the west slope, we have the Auburn Road Crew, the Colfax Road Crew, and then also the Forest Hill Road crew. And so these districts, they work on pavement maintenance, which could be crack filling potholes, full like lane reconstructions, things like that, and then drainage maintenance, which could be replacing culverts, things like that. Then also another important thing for this district, as well as really all the districts in the county, but is vegetation management. So the local districts do shoulder mowing, they do mastication of different types of vegetation on the shoulder. So all that happens in the road crew, the local road crews. Then we have a countywide signing and striping crew that one of the unique things, again, with District 5 is when you have snow in some of the upper elevations, you need to restripe things. The weather's more damaging to the road. So our striping crew spends a lot of time in District 5 restriping roads, fixing signs that maybe are hit by snow blowers or snow, things like that. So all part of the job. And then the other kind of interesting thing that happens, again, as part of our annual maintenance is vegetation management. And we have another crew that's a countywide crew, but they spend a lot of time on the west side of District 5 doing vegetation management, including big tree removal. And again, some of the more complicated vegetation issues that are roadside. So the other thing I mentioned, guardrail repair, that's something else that crew does. Then signal maintenance, and then emergency response and support. So lots of things going on every day in this district. We can move on to the next one. So next, I wanted to talk a little bit about just our summer 2024 road projects. And I'm not sure where we're drawing the line exactly between east and west, so I'm just going to mention everything that I think is close. But one of the first projects that we're hoping to undertake this summer is some repairs and surface treatment of some roads in Serene Lakes, of the neighborhood roads. It's a surface treatment called a rubberized chip seal that should go down sometime in July or August. Then another countywide project is our countywide overlay project. And actually, one of the main portions of the project will be doing an overlay of Bell Road, roughly between New Airport and Quartz. And then it also includes several more what we call dig out repairs in some of the worst areas of Bell Road all along the corridor. We have another project, a guardrail improvement project on Ridge Road in Dutch Flat, Magra Road in Gold Run, and then Dry Creek Road in Auburn. It's a safety project where we're improving guardrails. We're also going to be doing some striping and just general safety improvements on Placer Hills Road related to bikes later this summer as well. And then finally, a relatively large contract, we're actually doing some preventative maintenance. It's some preventative testing just to make sure some of the welds on the Forest Hill Bridge are totally safe and sound. The bridge is safe, but we're just being extra sure to do some testing. It's some testing that is happening all over the nation that's required by the Federal Highway Administration, and we're actually getting some federal aid to do it as well. So you'll see people hanging on the bridge and equipment hanging over the bridge, just like that fellow there. That's actually Kevin Ordway from our office. So that'll be going on later this summer as well. So next slide. So future projects. First one that's being developed is the Meadow Vista Walkway Improvement Project that would build some new sidewalks and pedestrian access improvements along Placer Hills Road and Meadow Vista. And so that project is in development. We're hoping to get it done to start construction in 2025 or 26. The next one is the Yankee Gyms Bridge replacement. Also, we're hoping to get some of it started this year, but most likely it'll be next year. On the lower left-hand corner of the slide, you can see a rendering of the proposed bridge. The existing bridge will stay, but this is a project to help improve access between Forest Hill and Colfax, specifically access related to fires. And that's a federally funded project. Then the Bell Road Roundabout project is an access improvement or an operational improvement project where we're proposing to install some roundabouts at the interchange there at Bell Road and I-80. And that project is in development too. Hoping to get that ready, and we're working on grant funding for the construction for that to go in 26, 27. Gorman Ranch Road is another road that washed out a while back. And we've been just to be nice, I'm just going to say we're working through the FEMA process to get that funded and repaired as soon as possible. And we're hoping to do it this year, but probably most likely the way it's going, it'll be next year. And then there are two other important projects I just want to make sure I mention too. One is the American River Debris Removal Project, which is everybody who's been down to the confluence has seen where the old bridge washed out just downstream of the Highway 49 bridge that takes you into El Dorado County. So that's a project where we intend to remove the debris from the river. And that's a couple years off, probably 2026. And then the last one is the Haynes Road Bridge replacement, which is if you've ever been down Haynes Road, there's a narrow bridge kind of in the middle of Haynes Road that goes over the PG&E Canal. It's very narrow and old, and Public Works is proposing to replace that bridge, hopefully next year. We're getting it ready to go then. So with that, let's move on to the next to last slide, which wanted to mention a couple of the reached out to Caltrans. I want to make sure, the county doesn't control Caltrans projects, but I wanted to make sure we gave a little bit of an update because I knew if we didn't, folks would ask. One of the big ones that probably folks have heard about is the project that's going to install a barrier and roundabouts on Highway 49 on the way to Grass Valley. That project has been awarded, and some utility work is happening right now. And my understanding is that road construction that the construction of that project would happen later this year on that, where you'd actually see the highway construction work. Another project is the sidewalk gap closure project on Highway 49 in Auburn as well, that's being led by PCTPA. I know they had some issues getting that project awarded, but that one is in the works too. The project will fill in some gaps, sidewalk gaps here in Auburn, and that project will go to construction. It sounds like hopefully by the end of this year. And there are several other projects that I know Caltrans is working on. I tried to hit the ones I thought folks would be interested in. And just to kind of wrap this up, future highway safety improvement projects, DPW, we're always looking for grants and actually we've been successful in finding grants to improve the safety of roadways, county roads. Same thing with pavement maintenance and preservation. So we're looking at some ways to improve our approach there. And then one of the most important things we do too, I know for this community is snow removal. So we're working on replacing equipment, which is something the county has invested in for a long time, but that continues as well. And I think the last slide, just wanted to show, and you could go to the next one, Sophie. Oh, and that's okay. That was my last slide, which is perfect. So I'll hand it back to you, Supervisor Gustafson, and see if there's any questions here.
Great, Matt. Thank you so much. And what a great job your crews do. They truly are unsung heroes. They just are incredibly hard. And I know you're available 24/7 through every major winter storm because I'm typically texting you, asking you what's going on.
It's all good.
Yeah. We have a question here on, has the nature of the intersection at Florence and 49 been decided? This would be, again, I think the Caltrans project. Doesn't seem that a roundabout would be a good way for people to enter 49 from Florence. This is the observation. So
yeah, and that could be something. Maybe what I would refer you to the Caltrans to talk about that. I believe it has, the two roundabouts are at Lone Star, and then I believe there is one, and I'd have to pull up a map, but I believe there is one at Florence as well. And then there's hard barriers between the two. And so I believe the answer is yes. And I know Caltrans did some outreach. And so the way to contact Caltrans about this question specifically would be, they have contact information. If you go to online, the Caltrans website, which is dot.ca.gov. And you know what I'll do is, and I'll type in the answer with the link to the website, but they have a Caltrans District 3 project site, and it has the Caltrans project manager's contact information. They would be the better person to answer that question. And I'll put this answer here in the link to the project website, and you can contact them.
Thank you, Matt. And again, if anybody has questions, go ahead and type them in to the Q&A platform. And just a reminder throughout all these presentations, if we can't answer you tonight, we will get you answers, and appreciate very much. Looks like both Raul and Matt are typing now. So
Yeah.
we'll move on, but we'll come back for any other questions. So moving on, we're going to hear an update on fire season and the work of CAL FIRE, Placer County Fire Department. I'd like to introduce Ryan Wessner, Assistant Chief, Office of Emergency Management. He plays a critical role in our Placer County Emergency Management Framework. His responsibilities encompass overseeing the fire and rescue branch, as well as serving as the fire marshal for the Placer County Fire Department. In this role he's tasked with coordinating efforts across various agencies and providing essential assistance to the Placer County Office of Emergency Management. His primary focus lies in disaster mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, where he collaborates closely with our allied agencies to ensure a comprehensive and effective approach to emergency situations. So Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do we still have Ryan with us?
Are we still, am I there?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Supervisor Gustafson, and the community that's listening in. I'm just going to give you all a brief update with CAL FIRE and Placer County Fire and what we're all doing out there. So next slide. Thank you, Sophie. The CAL FIRE Nevada Yuba Placer unit. We're made up of 22 engines, 3 bulldozers, 6 Type 1 hand crews, firefighting aviation with our air attack base at Grass Valley. We also have forest management that works throughout the unit and throughout District 5. We have a fire and arson investigation bureau. Right now we have 2 sworn officers in it and a very robust fleet management and mechanical support. We also with that have assistant chiefs and deputy chief unit chiefs with our leadership and our administrative support. So even though it's 3 different counties, we all come together under one leadership, and you'll see NEU, and that's what it means is Nevada Yuba Placer Unit. Next slide, please. Everybody always asks, what is our first response to an SRA vegetation fire from CAL FIRE? So in the red, this is what we have listed. If you have a vegetation fire and you call 911, it's in SRA, this is what you're going to get on the initial attack response. 1 battalion chief, 6 Type 3 fire engines, 2 hand crews, 2 bulldozers, 2 air tankers, 2 helicopters, 1 of the air attacks, which is coordinating all of that, and 1 of our sworn fire investigators. Everything is dispatched from our central dispatch and Grass Valley Emergency Command Center. And we work jointly with 4 other dispatch centers in Placer County to get the closest and best fire response. And what that means is closest available unit. So if the fire happens next to a firehouse, we are getting that fire engine closest available to it, regardless of what district it is and whose land it is. They're going to go first, and then we're going to backfill. Next slide, please. And how the system is working together. We have in District 5 in Placer County, we have federal land, state responsibility land, and local responsibility land. And these are all of our cooperating agencies. So one agency really can't do it alone. So we make agreements with everybody. Every year we have agreements that we signed in April, and each one of the agreements, we will decide how a vegetation fire is fought, who pays for it, who's responsible for the logistical support and the investigative activities. So that's all worked out. well before fire season starts. And again, that helps out with a more efficient response. This is a regional emergency delivery system. And again, it calls out the fiscal and jurisdictional responsibilities and the difference between the mutual aid and auto aid agreements. That next slide, please. Okay, here's the forecast. So hopefully we get this right. It looks like we're starting off a little faster than we thought this June with the last couple of weeks and all the events that have happened in the Sacramento Valley. But through June and through September, we're expecting a slower start to the significant portion of fire season, meaning that everything that's going on right now is not insignificant, but it's not to the time where our fine dead fuels and our 1,000-hour fuels are at their most driest and ready to take off. So if you look at the picture to the left, we'll show the normal fire season with the potential June and July, and then the below normals. So the below normals in the green you'll see are the higher elevations, and the normals are going through the Sacramento Valley. And then if you go to the significant fire potential side, August through September, which is our traditional fire season, it's showing everything as normal. And what this is representing is it's not saying that we're not going to have a fire season. It's just saying that we're not coming from a drought year into a new fire season. So with that, the significant fire potential threat is still there. In the high country, as always, it's going to be the wind events and the drying out of the heavier timber fuels. And in the lower country, you're going to see what we have right now. The fires at the sites of Ladoga, the fires in the front country, the herbaceous growth, the grass crop that hasn't burned in 2 years is really taking off now with that last little red flag event that we just had. So moving forward, it looks like it's a fast start, and it is, but we're looking to a normal fire season. Next slide, please. And then aligning our priorities in Placer County for a common purpose. And up top, this is kind of just a flow chart for the different avenues that we work together with Placer County Fire Department and CAL FIRE. With the top, we'll just start with the fire prevention, working in community risk reduction and fire marshal's office. This is home to me. We start off with their defensible space compliance. All of this stuff for defensible space and new construction standards and public education, it's all data driven. With the massive fires that we've had that have had multiple structures burned down in the last 10 years, we've taken data from that and we've pulled out what works and what doesn't work. And with that, we've found that first off, defensible space, and second off, the new construction standards are really helping a building fight fire on its own. And our next one is our fire suppression capabilities with the governor's office giving us an extended blue book staffing period, meaning higher staffing levels for longer durations during the year. The new aerial fleet that we have with the big C-130s and the Chinook helicopters and the Firehawks, which are the Black Hawks, and all of them with the new technology to be able to fly at night, something that I've never seen in my career, but now it's the norm for the new firefighters that are coming on. And again, the local government pre-positioning money that the governor's office gave out through OES. And that's a pot of money that allows the local governments to pool resources in areas in the case of a weather event, of whether it be fire or flood. The pre-positions really helped out this winter. Then we go down to fuel reduction and vegetation management, another avenue with CAL FIRE, Placer County Fire. We're advocating for the prescribed fires for homeowners to be stewards of their own property. We are actively pursuing 10 grants for forest health. We had 2 awarded to us up in Truckee with the cooperative landscape grant and the Trapper Forest Health with a total of 14 million, and then another 9 through the through the I-80 corridor that are right up to the point where they're going to get approved, but they haven't yet. So I don't want to dive into that too much. And again, with all those grants, we're developing the fuel breaks that are going up through Colfax area, and then all the work that's going on along Interstate 80, which you'll notice as you're traveling to the east side. And with all of that, we have the new opportunities with the new technologies. The AI cameras that you may or may not have seen with Alert California, they're all up and down the state. They're at our command center. These cameras can tell the difference between smoke and dust. And once they come down or they find smoke on a fire, they can triangulate that and get crews, get the ECC to dispatch to a pin drop or to a GPS coordinates on a map to get fire resources there effectively and efficiently. The reduced regulations for burning, that's one thing that we're working with, again, the homeowners and stuff to get them involved and taking care of their own properties and stewards of their own land. And with that, I think that's it. Yes. Thank you for all your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. I don't see any questions now in the queue. I'll give it here a minute and see if any pop in, but really appreciate the incredible work we're doing. And I assume that those grants might be held up in state budget discussions. Is that correct? The other 9?
Just talking with Chief Garcia, we've did extremely well for the state of the budget that we're in right now. But he wants to play it on the safe side, and we'll hold it just for a couple more weeks, and we'll get that information out.
Yeah, I know that there was a delay on a lot of grants and outside programs by the state until the budget is adopted and finalized by the legislature and the governor. So, question has come in. Do we have Chinook and C-130s now available for us?
Yes, we do. I live in Western Roseville, and it flies over my house about a couple times a week.
Great. So those are available now. And I think I think they were available starting, well, it wasn't going to be until the 17th, but they're here now. Is that right?
Correct. Our exclusive use helicopters are in service.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. So we'll move on to our next. We're going to get an update on public safety and the work of the Placer County Sheriff's Office from Lieutenant Ty Connors. I just learned tonight by reading his bio that he has been a resident since 1976 of Placer County. He graduated from Placer High School and has a BS in criminal justice from California Coast University. Placer County Sheriff's Office employee for 27.5 years. Current position is he's lieutenant for Placer County Office of Emergency Management Law Branch, lieutenant commander for Auburn Search and Rescue, Auburn Dive Team, and Marine Patrol, Air Operations, OHV Program, and Mobile Command Vehicle. So he wears a lot of hats. Anyway, welcome, Ty, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks, Cindy. I appreciate it. Yeah, and a lot of the things why I oversee a lot of those positions is, with my new position with the emergency management, a lot of those are related to mutual aid response. And so that's why they kind of gave a lot of those to me because of right now we're actually dealing with, and Ryan has sent out a strike team, and then we've sent deputies down to Calaveras County to help out with the fire down there. And so that's where a lot of our roles are when it comes to the regional coordinators with mutual aid. So thank you very much, Supervisor Gustafson. I appreciate being here. So next slide, Sophie. So again, I stole your image that you had, Cindy, with your district. Obviously, with this district, it's huge. Obviously a lot of it's rural, but also the one thing for you guys to understand is that we have the west side and west slope and east slope when it comes to stations. So primarily from the Auburn area up to basically Soda Springs is handled out of the Auburn office. And then beyond that, over to Tahoe is handled by the Tahoe station. You have we work closely with California Highway Patrol. Again, we have California Highway Patrol out of Auburn. We have one that we work with out of Gold Run. And then we also work with California Highway Patrol in Truckee. And with that, we have one contract city within this district, which is the city of Colfax. And with that being said, basically contract for law enforcement within the city limits. Forest Hill, we have a station up there as well. That is not contracted, but we do station that with a sergeant oversees it and 4 deputies when it comes to search and rescue. And they're considered kind of a resident deputy, so they can have an immediate response up into the rural areas of that Forest Hill divide. So next slide. So one thing I wanted to kind of cover was obviously one thing having a large district is the Municipal Advisory Council. There are a lot of them within this one district that Cindy oversees. Just kind of want to go over our calls for service within those. These numbers were I pulled from January 1st of this year to present day. In our North Auburn MAC, we have a total of 5,991 calls for service. Again, that's just saying either citizens initiated calls or deputy initiated calls when it comes to traffic stops and other proactive approach. But obviously out of all the district, all the MACs, the North Auburn is our busiest area. We start going up the hill in the Forest Hill. We have about 709 calls for service when it comes to the Forest Hill divide. And then going over to, we have the Meta Vista. Meta Vista has handled about 210 calls for service in that area since January. And then going up to Weimar, Applegate, Colfax, kind of like this called the WACMAC. They've had 789 calls for service since January. And then going farther up the hill, you have Squaw Valley. Squaw Valley MAC, they've had 307. Sorry, missed Donner Summit. Obviously, it's probably one of our slowest areas when it comes to calls for service. They had 43. And then with Squaw Valley being 307. And then into North Tahoe, we had 2,231 calls for service up to present day. So next slide. The biggest part that, I think a lot of it when it comes to, we're coming into fire season, obviously with Calaveras kicking off and like what Chief Westner said, we are in fire season and we're trying to prepare as best we can. We are actually putting on a unified command training. We did one on the West Slope back in the end of May. Tomorrow, Ryan and I have been quite busy kind of preparing. We're doing the East Slope unified command training. And what that means is that we're basically putting on a scenario-based, fire-based scenarios. And we're kind of treating it as the first initial onset of a fire. Fire and law are getting together truck to truck as they would be out in the field. We actually have simulations with our dispatching and making it as realistic as possible. So we're actually holding an East Side Unified Command training up in Palisades. And with that being said, we invited, we have a lot of representation from different districts up in the Tahoe Basin. We have over 20 different agencies that are going to be represented at our training tomorrow. And we had about the same on the West Slope when it came to all the different unified, all the different agencies that came to involve with law enforcement and fire. But when it comes to the biggest part, emergency notification, we've really been pushing out with a lot when it comes to Placer Alert. Hopefully, if you're on this call, you've registered through Placer Alert. If you don't have a landline phone, this is where it's very imperative that you register, because this is the way that you're going to get those type of notifications when it comes to a fire or any other type of emergency within your area. One thing we worked really hard on, and one thing that we heard the community when it came to the Tahoe Basin on that East Slope when it comes to vacationers, the transient population when it comes to short-term rentals, as how do they get notified when it comes to an emergency. And so we worked really hard, and the county PIOs have done a tremendous job. We kind of spearheaded the project, but it was overall a Tahoe Basin program when it comes to Tahoe Alerts. Tahoe Alerts basically is a one-stop shop for people that are visiting. They can go to tahoealerts.com and they can enter their address. They can see where they're at on their phone, and they'll point them into the appropriate agency that they need to register for when it comes to alerting. And that's entirely on the California side and Nevada side. So it encompasses the entire Tahoe Basin. So really proud of that project. I think it's really good outreach. Again, just to kind of a reminder for the community when we're coming in, if we do have an evacuation order announcement, we have the high-low sirens that are patrol units. It sounds kind of like you're in England. It's kind of that's the only time you'll ever hear that siren, and that's the siren telling you that there's an evacuation order in your area. We try and do our best when it comes to using social media, using the Placer alerts. The Ready Placer dashboard is, again, another one-stop shop. County's done a really good job with kind of having an area to get all the information when it comes to road closures, evacuations, or anything regarding an incident like with the avalanche or other mudslides or whatever it is in your area. We also use 211. 211 has been huge when it comes to eliminating kind of the massive calls when people are inquiring about shelters or am I under evacuation order or other things. Dispatch is already busy enough when it comes to an incident. So 211 has been a great connection when it comes to fielding calls for service and helping out with any type of concerns. But when it comes to evacuations, again, you won't hear anything different. We're trying to make it pretty standardized, but you have evacuation warning. This is just, again, telling you that you have, there's an incident occurring, especially when it comes to a fire. You have to kind of get ready, make sure you have your go bag. This is a time where you have people that are maybe ambulatory that need some help with transportation. Evacuation warning might be that time you need to get out. Then we go into evacuation order, which means that people have to we're telling you have to get out of the area. And then once you leave, you can't get back in until we do the repopulation. Shelter in place, again, if we have an incident where we have maybe, an armed suspect in your area running around and we're chasing after them, you might get a shelter in place, better to stay safe inside. And then the temporary safe refuge it's kind of again, just kind of letting people know that, within your area, to kind of look for those, spots where you have high clearing, maybe a field, maybe a meadow or anything like that. And that if you get stuck and you need to, and the fire is coming and you need to get to a location, the temporary safe refuge is something that we will also push out. When it comes to shelters, we work with HHS closely when it comes to the shelters, temporary evacuation points and evacuation shelters, overnight food, and working with Red Cross. Next slide. Probably one of the biggest questions I ever get is, why does Placer County not do pre-zoning? Pre-zoning, you hear different, with different third parties, zoning software that's out there. Perimeter is kind of a big one that's happening right now with the Tahoe Basin. Placer County is the only county that's not using perimeter. And I explained it during numerous kind of town halls and everything else, is a lot of agencies go to this type of third-party software pre-zoning because they don't have kind of that resource when it comes to GIS. And the county does. With the sheriff's office and with the county, we have a pretty good depth of field when it comes to how do we deal with creating a zone when it comes to evacuations. A lot of these pre-zoning softwares, that's not what's notifying you that you're getting evacuated. That's, again, through Placer Alert. But the main thing is that we take kind of more a strategical approach, surgical approach when it comes to creating our zones. When you have a pre-designated zone and say a fire is touching it, that they evacuate that whole zone when theoretically you only need about a quarter of it to evacuate. And again, our process and how we go through it is that we really want to make sure and not displace people when they don't have to be. And so that's where we take our approach. We do, again, create our zones pretty, quickly. We get it out to the public. That's where you have Ready Placer. It's on the dashboard. And we make sure, and working with our unified command with fire, that again, we're doing the best job we can not to displace people when we don't have to, but also doing it to the who needs to be evacuated. So again, a huge shout out to the Board of Supervisors and Cindy, supporting this model that we have. We're not very many agencies in the state have this kind of model. We have full-time fire, law, and county working in the Office of Emergency Management. And I think it's overall just a huge benefit for the citizens of Placer County. So I think that's my last slide.
Thanks so much, Ty. Appreciate it. And I would like to add that I saw firsthand what happened when the Caldor fire entered the Tahoe Basin, and a zone sort of evacuation was ordered that went across Emerald Bay all the way up into bordering Placer County. And residents on one side of the street were evacuated, and Placer County residents weren't, because we were surgical, and their zoning platform sent people away that were nowhere near the danger, and just led to more people leaving their homes and families, their structures, unprotected, and all of the complications with that. So I know many people like the automation of these software programs, but they don't realize the knowledge our deputies have of the roads and of the communities and of the terrain, of what really does need to be evacuated, and making sure that we're very precise in that, so we're not evacuating others. It takes a long time to get back into your home once we've evacuated you, because we're trying to keep them secure once you're gone, and make sure no one is taking advantage of empty homes in an area. So there's a lot to both evacuating and then repopulating areas. So I appreciate that, the efforts, and what tremendous results you had on the mosquito fire and the river fire through your process. So hats off to you. I've talked long enough. I don't see any questions in the queue for you, Ty, but thanks again for being here. Good luck on the training tomorrow. I know you and Ryan have worked really hard on it. So thank you again.
Thanks, Cindy.
Okay. And so now we'll just go to a few, well, hopefully not too hot topics, because we're done with fire, but a few of the topics that I hear a lot about from the community. Go ahead, Sophie. And just to make sure folks know, in the supervisor's office, we touch a lot of pieces. We touch everything with the county, but at a very high level. And so the things that I've been happy to work on for you and with you are listed here. We've done a lot in transportation and road work, especially advocating with Caltrans. A lot of times, the work that I'm doing is contacting Caltrans, the District 3 director, working on some of these projects and how they impact our residents. Same with fire preparation, defensible space, really focusing Placer County on hiring that forest health coordinator, working on these evacuation programs, and making sure we're putting every dollar that we can into helping upgrade our fire engines, our facility upgrades, our defensible space fuels reduction programs, our hazardous vegetation program. Obviously, protection of open space and supporting Placer Land Trust. Really proud of the work Sophie did and others to help us get that word into Senator Dolly's office to get that river debris removal funded by the state. It was the state's bridge, had laid there for 40 years, 50 years. So we were instrumental in bringing that to everybody's attention and getting the state funding for that. And obviously continuing to support our Placer Conservation Plan. And you see the other things. We touch a lot of things, and we're not experts at any of them, but our job is to serve you and make sure we elevate this. I did want to talk about the next slide, Sophie, on insurance. So while we at the county can't specifically do anything to change our insurance rates, we can continue to advocate for you. And that's what we've been doing, gosh, for the 5 years I've been in office. But CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, is starting a statewide wildfire insurance group in which I've joined. They are banding together communities from across the state that are facing the same issues that we've been facing. We've been one of the hardest hit, but we're not the only ones. And they have suggested that we compile all the stories that we can to send to their offices to use with our elected officials. And we appreciate you just sending them to our email, sharing them however you can with us so that we can get them to CSAC and they can use them with our elected officials. They want testimonials to share with Commissioner Lara, people that are at jeopardy of losing their homes, have lost potentially a sale of their home because the new buyers can't get insurance, young buyers that can't afford the insurance once they get the new quote, any kinds of stories like that, as well as those on fixed incomes and other scenarios in which it really is about we want housing for all our people, but we're pricing them out with these insurance rates. And they're not giving us credit for the hard work and the efforts that we've put into defensible space and home hardening. So please get us your comments and letters, and we'll pass those on, and we'll continue to advocate with our state legislators, with CSAC, with anyone that will hear us to try to support you on the insurance issues. Go ahead, Sophie, on to the next one. Another thing that we've invested in is the land tender program, which is mapping our Placer County forested lands. And we, as many of you know this already and probably have heard, we have the highest number of residences and businesses in the wildland urban interface of any county in the state of California. And so with that, we're trying to do proper planning to invest our dollars. When we can apply for grants, obviously we're going to do that. And then where we have county dollars, to make sure that we're addressing the areas that are most likely to create a catastrophic wildfire, where we have, where we need to invest dollars in forest resilience and in wildfire prevention, and really developing a plan with a countywide action plan, localized assessments and partnership building, and then regional coordination, so that we're applying for grants. We are focusing our dollars and applying for grants in the areas that will most benefit and protect our assets, meaning our communities. So thank you, Sophie. Go to the next slide. Quickly, we adopted or recommended adoption of our county budget at our last meeting, just over $1.2 billion. Proprietary funds, those are funds held for specific projects of about 198 million. Our operating budget is up just about 1% over last year and is about 800,000. And our final budget adoption is scheduled for next Tuesday, June 25th. And with that, we're still in really good, healthy shape as a county. Thanks. I always attribute so much of this to the path my predecessors put us on to really save money and to be very aware that things like this year's state budget come up, and we don't want to be part of that mess. We want to be self-sustaining and be prepared to address the needs of our communities. So we're not touching any reserves. We do have reserves for operating, but we don't need to this year. The steady and consistent property tax revenues are really driving our county funds. Sales tax and transient occupancy tax are pretty level, but we've continued to see strong growth in our property values, and we need to see that continue in order to fund all of the projects and programs you've heard about tonight. And then Sophie, you can go to the next slide. We are very proud of our IT department and really being very first at the table on a lot of broadband project grants. We are trying to expand broadband to all areas of District 5. We have some of the most challenged areas to provide broadband services. And so this is an overall map county-wide of the projects. And then Sophie, you'll go to the next slides. We have a number of projects. I'm just going to run through these slides and not read them all to you. This presentation will be available, and we can get you more details. If you send us an email, we can get your address and see if you're going to be in an area that is going to get expanded broadband. In addition to the money, keep going, Sophie, you can go on to the next one on North Auburn. That'll be one of the larger ones, 1,600 passings, meaning going by a commercial building or a residence, 104 miles of new fiber. Keep going. And then South Auburn, again, another 290 passings. And go to the next one, Meadow Vista, 2,200. So a big area of Meadow Vista getting service, 73 miles. And just a minute, Sophie, go back one slide. I did want to mention that with all of the funds, we have invested through the county approximately $19 million, $10 million from our federal American Rescue Plan dollars for broadband we allocated, 1.5 million from the CARES funding from COVID, and then 7.4 million from a general fund. That matches Astound Broadband, who we awarded the contracts to the tune of about 50% of the cost of these projects. They're picking up the other 50%. And we are still hopeful that we're going to see the release of the California Public Utility Commission is sitting on about $30 million allocated for Placer County to continue these projects. So if you're not in the projects now, we're still working to get you served with broadband and improve your options for broadband services. And then finally, we're trying to be everywhere all at once. So go to the next slide. We're always looking to have coffees and opportunities for you to meet. Tomorrow morning, we'll be at Depot Bay Coffee in Auburn with Auburn City Manager for a coffee. A couple of weeks ago, we were at the Ophir Fire Station with Chief Estes, and we'll continue to do these. We love getting out and talking to folks when it isn't a meeting and you're limited to 3 minutes, where we can really catch up and talk about issues that concern you. Our Board of Supervisors will be meeting in Eastern County. We meet quarterly in the Tahoe area, and next Monday and Tuesday we'll be in Tahoe. You can always Zoom to any meeting and provide your public comment there. And then I have a couple questions that came in while I was talking. Address the CAL FIRE insurance, which is bleeding us to death. We need help now. Yes. I'm doing everything I can in my power. I know they're demanding thousands of dollars. The CAL FIRE, I think you're talking about the CAL FIRE plan that is patently unfair. I know the state legislature is working on, and the insurance commissioner are working on options that are going to try to provide more availability of more providers to come back into the market. Part of the reason that we're seeing such high premiums is that so many insurers have left the state and are not competing with the others. So if you will send us that information, those of you who've written these questions, please send it to our email. And can we copy and paste it, Sophie, into our emails so we can get this to CSAC and make sure that we move this forward. And then goats are very effective. Thank you, Diane. Absolutely. Grazing was an effective means. Also, our indigenous peoples would, as they camped and left camps in the winter months, they would set fires to the low-level vegetation. And our ecology over 7,000 to 10,000 years of indigenous people really helped control the fires. It was really post our invasion of the native lands that things really started to change, and we've modified it in ways that we need to recoup and get back to our natural Sierra forest. So I know that isn't satisfactory to any of us facing that. I just lost my fire insurance this year and had to go on the FAIR plan. I know how unfair it is personally. It is really driving people away from our county and hurting us. So really appreciate those of you who've stayed with us through this evening. Please contact our office anytime. Our job is to serve you, and we'll continue to do these as we see it. This was our first ever Western Town Hall, and we'll continue to do these. If you found it helpful, maybe we can do them twice a year to bring you up to speed on projects and programs that are happening. Thank you again, everybody. And I think with that, we can sign off. And there are all the contacts for the folks that were online tonight. Feel free to email them, call them directly. I find our county staff are so dedicated to serving our residents. They respond so quickly to all of your questions. So please take this opportunity, take a screenshot or look for this when it's posted later this week so that you can contact any of those folks. And with that, I think we'll sign off, Sophie, unless there was anything else we need to cover.
Nope.
Okay. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And please let us know if you have other questions. Take care.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks all
Thank
the county
you.
staff. All right, you're
Cindy.
still here. I wasn't sure you were all here. Thank
We're
you.
here. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.